I was rated one of the top quarterbacks in Southern California for my class. I was ranked in like the top 3 or something crazy like that.
On today's Find the Balance Friday edition of the Odd Coaches podcast, Dr. Adams and Coach Francis interview Garnett Overby III from the Institute of Sport and Social Justice. Garnett discusses the work of the Institute, shares his thoughts on the Finding the Balance book project, as well as discussing the multitude of changes in college athletics, including the transfer portal and NIL. Welcome to today's show. The Odd Coaches podcast is sponsored by the CKA Save Project. The CKA Save Project is an industry leader in providing student-athlete academic and athletic support. From assessing student-athletes' academic and athletic skills, to measuring and monitoring student-athlete academic progress, to improving student-athlete time management and organizational skills, the CKA Save Project provides wraparound services for student-athletes from middle school through college. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by emailing cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Greetings and salutations and welcome to the Odd Coaches podcast. My name is Dr. Keith Adams, and unfortunately my partner is on assignment, but that is okay. So Coach Francis sends his best, and today is a very special Find the Balance Friday episode for me personally, because I get to interview one of the finest advocates for student athletes I have ever met through actions, not words, and that is Mr. Garnett Overby, who works with the Institute of Sport and Social Justice. Garnett, man, I'm going to pause and just say it is just good to see you. How are you, man?
My friend, my buddy, Dr. Adams, it's good to see you. And we were talking earlier. This is the first time because of COVID I've had a chance to see you as doctor. So, man, I'm applauding you, my brother. That's a great accomplishment for Black men in America. So shout out to you. Shout out to Dr. Francis. Sorry I couldn't be here with you today, Doc, but we're going to meet. I promise you we're going to do that. So shout out to you.
Yes, indeed. And Coach will love that because he is pursuing his admin work. That's why he is on assignment. And Garnett, I am not Dr. Adams without the help of you and your organization and all the people who just gave me time and gave me truth. So that is the first time I can publicly acknowledge that. Dr. Lapchick and the time he gave me that he didn't have to. So we'll get into that throughout the show, but I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our audience in terms of your playing and your coaching career, and walk us to your work with the Institute of Sport and Social Justice. The floor is yours, my friend.
Well, despite the gray hair here, I've been active in sport for 40 years, man. That's crazy to say that, but sport for me started when I was 8 years old. And my first organized sport before I got to organized sport, I was like most kids in America back in the 80s and early 90s. I was out in the street playing ball. So, that's where it really started for me, that competition and just wanting to be a part of a team and being with the guys, right? And exercising those athletic skills that you have. So I got into organized sports when I was 8 years old. My first sport was basketball. And funny thing, man, the name of my team was the Smurfs. So I'll never forget that.
That is a dated reference.
Yeah, for real. And so played that and got into football. I always had a passion for football. Football was my sport. I remember my buddy, man, my good friend, Anthony Young. That's my brother. That's the closest thing I have to a brother. He had played flag football at like 6, and I never got into the flag football, but he came home one day in the summer when we were 8 years old, and he was all excited, talking about, man, you got to come play on this football team with me. And I was like, dude, I don't want to do the flag. He was like, no, this is tackle. So I remember running home, man, and telling my dad, busting in the door and telling my dad, and he's all excited as well. So he went and he signed me up. And my first funny experience with football. So he goes and he signs me up. I get all signed up. They tell me practice is the next day. And so my dad is like, okay, we got to go get a cup. And so I'm riding in the car home and I'm thinking like, what is wrong with my dad? We got a cupboard full of cups. Like, why do we have to go get this specialized cup? And so I finally asked him, he explained to me what a cup was all about. So that was kind of like my introduction into football. My second year playing football, we went to the championship and we lost in the championship. And that moment, it created a burning desire for me to win a football championship. And that became my life goal as an athlete at that time. And went through all out Pop Warner, played in championships, semifinals, but never won. Went to high school. My high school, we weren't very good. We were competitive. We was always the third or fourth place team in the conference, but never really competitive. So there was no real expectation to win a championship there, but the passion and the drive was still there. And it became a passion and a drive to go to college and to be able to play at that next level. And I remember I was injured my junior year. And going into my junior year, I was rated one of the top quarterbacks in Southern California for my class. I was ranked in like the top 3 or something crazy like that. And during that time in Southern California, if anybody knows about football, the 80s and the 90s in Southern California was the hotbed of America. Like guys were going to college and into the NFL like crazy coming out of there. And so it was kind of an honor to be just, in that class of players at that time. But I had an injury and my stock went from being way up here to I was a nobody. And going into my senior year, like I had no offers. I had just nothing. And so going into my senior year, I just balled out. I was just like, well, what do I have to lose? I didn't want to stay in Compton. So I was like, I got to get out of here. So I just balled out and ended up going to the University of Nevada, Reno, Wolfpack for all those out here who don't know. And so, I went there. One of my highlights in colleges is that was 1992. That was the first year that the Wolfpack moved up from D1 AA to D1A, won the conference championship that year. We were the first team and the only team to do that until Georgia Southern did it a few years ago. But we were the first team to do that. So that was a first that I was a part of. And then I played in the first, what's known as the modern day overtime college football. I played in the first modern day college football overtime game. It was 1995. It was in the Las Vegas Bowl against Toledo. And unfortunately, we lost, but I was in that game. I remember that game and I remember playing that game. And then sports for me as an athlete, it kind of ended right there for me. I had no desire, no passion really to go to the NFL. I had a lot of guys telling me that I could have played at the level because I was a 4-year starter at the college level. And, a lot of my buddies that played at that level in the NFL, they were telling me, gee, you can play, man, just come. But I had lost that passion and that drive to be an athlete, the grind of training, the level of commitment that it takes, the nutrition, what it does to your body. I just lost that, but I didn't lose the passion for the game. So that's when I began coaching, and I started coaching youth ball, and I coached a lot of youth ball coming up. And, did some training, some high school athletes that was trying to get to that level. But I really got into coaching when my son, when he turned 8 years old, he came to me, he's like, Dad, I want to play football. He had that same look in his eye that I remember I had when I was 8 years old. And so I got into coaching because I wanted my son to be coached right. I just didn't want to throw him out there and have him not properly coached. And so I began to coach. And so I coached him all the way up until I coached him. He just graduated this past year in high school. And so I coached him all the way through high school. I'm currently the wide receiver and defensive back coach at Orlando Christian Prep High School here in Orlando, Florida. A phenomenal program. Head coach is Coach Gershom Demosthenes. He's been the head coach in that program for 9 years. I've been in the program for 8. And, during that time, we played two state quarterfinals, 2-time state semifinals, 1-time state runner-up, and 2-time state champs. And so, we're doing some wonderful things over here in this program. I've been instrumental in the 8 years that I've been with this program. Doc, 25 student athletes have come out of our program and gone on to college to play ball and to change their lives. And you know how that is. When you get an opportunity to go to college, coming from, maybe not the best of situations, it's a life changer. 25, Doc, and I'm very proud of that. And
as you should be.
Yeah, so that's kind of like where I'm at right now. I don't know how much longer I'm going to coach because my son is going off to college now, and my connection is to him. He's not playing college ball, but, just want to stay in touch. He's going to be close to you, Doc, because he's going to be at Morgan State University.
Yes,
and so I'm proud of that. But we'll see. It's wherever the Lord leads, that's where I go. Oh, 2 other things I just wanted to share with you, Doc. I'm also the team chaplain on the team. And that's very important to me because I have a really close relationship to the Lord. And I want, coaches, parents, and players to know being a student athlete doesn't mean that you have to get cussed out and degraded and demeaned and all of that. No, we have found success with ministering to these young men, speaking respectfully to them. I coach intense. Now I can get intense and I'll get into your face. But if I'm doing that to demean a student, to tear down his character, well, what good does that do for that young man or for that student athlete? And so, I just have a passion for that as well. Coach Dungy showed that you can coach at a level, at the highest level, and win at the highest level without, tearing down the character of your players and cursing them out and all of those different things. We've baptized young men on our team, so that's a highlight. Right now, we're taking our team this year through fasting and praying, understanding what that discipline is and what it means to a Christian in a Christian life. So those are like the highlights. Yeah, winning the state championships are great, but having guys call you up and, when they're in college and say, hey, coach, I'm starting a Bible study group. Can you give me some guidance? That's where it's at for me. That's where it happens.
I love it. And before we transition to segment 2 and talk about the work of the Institute for Sport and Social Justice, I want to ask, as a coach and as an athletic consultant, for you in Florida, because Garnett's based out of Florida, what has been the biggest challenge you face coaching, not post-COVID, but living with COVID? Can you speak a little bit about that? Because I think coaches around the country kind of want to know, male and female, the shared challenges that you may have. So if you could speak to that, that'd be great.
COVID really wasn't so much of a challenge for us here in Florida. Florida was real liberal, with how they dealt with COVID, compared to other places in the country. Everybody kind of got shut down right there in March of 2020, and we did too. But I'll tell you, Doc, when we were back in summer practices, man, in July. Now we had to do it with face masks, and that was pretty tough, being out here in Florida, 80, 90 degree weather, high humidity. That became a challenge, but we were there where most of the country was shut down. My home state, California, they didn't play that season. We played a 10-game season. And what year? And we won a state championship that year. That was the year we won one of our state championships during COVID, where you had other places. I think Maryland was one of those states that was shut down too,
yes,
right?
Yes. Shut down, and a lot of different rules, regulations, start up, start down. So yeah, we missed out the first year totally. And then the second year, there was just a lot of moves and maneuvers. So, I wanted you to share that, as everybody has different experiences. And I think that's just a great time to pause. So fans, we'll be right back. And on the other side of the break, you'll get introduced to possibly one of the finest organizations working with student athletes, professional athletes. I can't wait for Garnett to share all the great work, and then hopefully you can join the work too. We'll be right back on the Odd Coaches podcast.
The reviews are in for Dr. Keith Adams' book, Finding the Balance, My Personal Journey to Academic and Athletic Success. College professor and student athlete academic expert Dr. Lisa Rubin said, "There is nothing out there like this book, so I do hope people will pay attention and give it a read." Former George Mason standout Fowler Campbell said, "Consider this book an opportunity to work directly with Dr. Adams just like I did. I assure you that there will be something you can take away that will be useful to you throughout your personal journey." Ryan Waite, a recent college graduate who is a software engineer, said, "I like how the book is based on research, which makes it good for general students as well as student athletes." The book serves as both a memoir to Dr. Adams' 30-year academic and athletic career, as well as an instructional guide to assist student athletes, parents, coaches, teachers, and administrators navigate through the challenges of finding a better balance between academic and athletic success. The book includes over 15 personal stories and anecdotes from Dr. Adams, along with numerous former players and colleagues from a variety of sports and endeavors. You can order your copy at www.ckasaveproject.org. From the main page, simply click CKA Save Project Services and order the Find the Balance book. For more information, contact Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to the Odd Coaches podcast, and with us today on this special Find the Balance Friday edition is Garnett Overby. And Garnett, I want you to talk to our audience about the Institute for Sport and Social Justice and the impact you're having. You have the floor, my friend. Go in any direction you want.
Well, this organization, this nonprofit, it's a national nonprofit that was started back in 1985 by Dr. Richard Lapchick. And he's currently the chair of the DeVos Sports Business Management Program at the University of Central Florida. And it started as the National Consortium for Academics and Sports. And we did a name change and a brand change in 2018 to the Institute for Sport and Social Justice. But originally, the organization was started on the degree completion program. Dr. Lapchick recognized back in the 80s that there were a lot of student athletes that were going through and they were exhausting their eligibility, but they still needed a semester, maybe a year left to finish their degree. And there was nothing really in place for them to be able to do that other than coming out of their pocket and being able to finish their degree. So he helped with the consortium of schools across the country. He started this degree completion program where these student athletes will become ambassadors for their athletic program. They would go out into the community and do community service. They would do speaking engagements, and they were basically ambassadors for the university. In return, they would be allowed to finish their degree. And so that's where it started. Then you know how organizations, if an organization can grow and last, it evolves and evolves into something that you never maybe even thought about. And so as it started to grow and evolve, then came in the idea of diversity, equity, inclusion, social justice. And so now today, the organization is built around those things. So we have a Huddle Up program that covers all of our programming and all of our training. So we have Huddle Up for social justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have a Huddle Up for transformational leadership, and we Huddle Up for gender violence prevention. And so all of these programs are delivered to any sports organization. So we work very heavily with the collegiate level and also professional sports. So we have a really good relationship with Major League Baseball. So we do a lot of their trainings. And we have a lot of these posted on our YouTube channel as well. And you can go and see some of the trainings and testimonials. And so I know, for example, we were talking earlier about the COVID. One of the things that our organization was able to achieve during COVID, when everybody was doing virtual stuff, we completed over 200 trainings in that year on all of our diversity, equity, inclusion, gender violence prevention, transformational leadership, critical decision-making skills for student athletes. And so we were able to deliver all of these programs. I say that we are the premier organization in the country when it comes to training athletic administrators, coaches, student athletes in these areas of social justice. We also do some other things as well in terms of giving back to the community. So we have a Hope for Stanley program, and that's a program where we have been in New Orleans since Hurricane Katrina, helping to build homes and help people just restore their lives. And we've been doing that since, we started that the year after Katrina, and we've been there since. We've helped to build over 150 homes, and we are the most dedicated group outside of the state of Louisiana that has continued with the support and help of Hurricane Katrina recovery. And that program is called Hope for Stanley. We also do a bunch of other great things. We have a program called Playmaker of the Month. Not really a program, it's a recognition. And so Playmaker of the Month goes out it's available to all high schools and colleges. And it's designed to recognize your student athletes for their academic and their community service advocacy. Not so much their athletic accolades. They get enough of that in the banquets and, in their local newspapers. But this is to recognize the student part of their existence. And so, we send it out, and it's really easy. Anybody can nominate a student athlete to receive that. We have a national committee that will then look at that, and we vote on it. And Dr. Adams is actually one of the members of that national committee. So thank you, Doc, for participating in that. And then we announce it. And so those student athletes are recognized on our website. We blast it all over our social media. And so that program goes from October to June of every year. So Doc, I'll make sure you get that information so that you can send out to your audience about how they can get involved with that as well. Absolutely. And then we also do a program called Invisible Women in Sport. This is a webcast podcast that has actually been in existence. This project has been going for 5 years. And it started with Diversity Week at the University of Central Florida. We wanted to do something for Diversity Week. So we put together a panel of 5 women that were women of color that were athletic administrators in sport. And it was all across the country. And they came and they did this panel and they talked about their journey of what it's like being a woman of color going down this path of a male, white dominated industry, basically. And it was the most well-received activity of the week for Diversity Week at UCF. So UCF was excited about it. It got us excited about it. We didn't really have a name for it at that time. And as a result of we were going back and just debriefing on it, the name Invisible Women in Sport kind of came out of that. And so 2018 came along and we did a traditional podcast on it, which is still up and running. And we upload to it even still to this day. And so it was well received. We got over 5,000 downloads in over like 35 countries throughout the world. And we just got flooded with all of this feedback. Well, it takes money to keep things going, right, Doc? So you know about that. So 2019, we kind of ran out of money. We needed to go back and kind of just look at it again and how it could be restructured because it just kind of dropped on us so quickly. We really didn't have an opportunity to figure out the structure and the strategy of it and how it was going to look. So, but 2019 was very rewarding for it because we just basically ran the replays of the podcast and it was still alive and people were still downloading it and it was doing very well. One of the benefits that came out of COVID for us was the fact that we discovered Zoom. And we was like, here we have an instrument, a platform that cost us nothing, and we can continue to run our podcast. So we've been doing that. We've just, since April of 2020, we filmed yesterday. We had our 48th production since then. And those are also on our YouTube. So you can go back, Doc, and you can get the replays of those. And on July 28th, we're going to do a big one for Invisible Women in Sport. It's going to be our 50th episode, and it's going to be huge. And I'll send you all of the promos and everything for that, Doc, so that you can get that out there. But these are the things that we're doing with this organization, with this institution. We've touched a lot of lives. We've helped develop a lot of leaders. And as a result of that, I can honestly say that I feel like the world is a better place because we've been out there in terms of our student athletes. They're more aware. Our athletic administrators are well-versed in leadership, understanding diversity, embracing culture, and just connecting better with one another and building the relationships. So, that's pretty much where we're at right now with the organization. We're still continuing to grow and expand on it. And we're just looking for opportunities for people to just connect with us.
And that is a great segue. So fans, I want to introduce you to how I got involved and met Garnett at the Final Four many moons ago. I'm just a young coach, and I live in two worlds. Fans of the show know I live in an academic world and I live in an athletic world. And when I met Garnett, it was like the first organization beyond my little bubble that did what I really wanted to do on a national level. CKA was founded in 2009 with a group of my former players and former students and former colleagues talking about the things that Garnett mentioned with the Institute in Sport and Social Justice. And I'm one of those folks. I had an opportunity to work directly with them to get training, to have those strong conversations that not everybody can have, because we do come from an academic and an athletic lens. And as I am trying to obtain my doctorate, you need to be around smart people. Iron sharpens iron. So Dr. Lapchick, who was one of the busiest people in the world, I asked him, hey, could you look at my draft? Literally my first 3 chapters. And he put me in the queue. He said, hey, give me a couple of months because I'm doing a lot of stuff, but I'll take a look at it and give you some feedback. And he did. I'm talking about a 200-page draft of a doctoral student that one of the greatest leaders in the 20th and 21st century gave me time and gave me truth. Garnett was always available to just talk. Hey, I see you want to study this. Maybe think about this, maybe think about that. Not telling me what to do, but giving me something to think about. And so many people in the organization did the same thing. So fast forward to today, Garnett graciously has reviewed in part our Finding the Balance book project, which he actually lived. Because as I was going through the doctoral process, I'm with them doing trainings and still getting calls from my chair and getting calls from my committee. So Garnett, can you talk about the Finding the Balance book from the lens of you as a mentor to me throughout this process? And any feedback would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. I got the book right here next to me, Doc, and you can see it's a little bit of a glare, but I got my notes in here and everything. But yeah, Doc, I would have to say that this book has been more of a mentor for me, reading it and going through it. The parts that really resonate for me and actually confirm what I'm doing, with the Institute and also as a coach, 3 areas that stood out for me: improving teamwork, building community, and learning those valuable life lessons. And so Dr. Adams talks very heavily about, these 3 areas. It's pretty much built around that. When you talk about finding a balance, this is what he bases his scales of balance on in the book. And for me, just personally as a coach, it has reaffirmed a lot of the things that I've been doing as a coach. When you talk about improving teamwork, we just personally as a coach, we're a small program. We usually only have about 30 kids on our team. The most we've ever had was 35. And so imagine trying to take a team from day one, all the way starting in August, all the way to playing for a state championship in December, 14, maybe 15 games. You get injuries. Injuries come, with football. But anybody who knows the sport of football knows that you are only as good as the weakest link on your chain. And so we have these, we've been able to show our leaders of our team, the impact players on the team. Like, it's good for you to be able to go out and to star every week, to get these offers, to be on the social media and everything. But you're not a true champion unless you bring somebody with you. That's going to make you a true champion. And so these young men have bought into that. Again, improving teamwork. And so they've bought into that, and they've learned to realize that some of them have gotten injured. And now that guy that might be a freshman on the team that doesn't lift as much as they do, doesn't run as fast as they do, may not have the IQ of the game as they do. Now they're dependent on that player to be able to keep the team going until they can recover and get back and help out. And so just being able to take those components of your book and apply it to where I'm at to help the further development of these young men, that's been phenomenal. Building community. When you talk about building community, I saw it this past spring, Doc, in terms of building community with our team. We have a group of kids that graduated the 2018 and the 2019, and those were big classes for us. And we put out a lot of student athletes at that time. At our spring football game this year, every one of those young men, it was about 15 of them, came back to Orlando. They were at the spring game on the sidelines with these young men that are now taking their place with the uniform and hyping them up and giving them love and encouraging them, taking pictures after the game and proud of being a part of that community. And they brought these young men into the community. That's building community to me. Because these young men, they didn't have to do it. They're off, they're gone, they're in college. But it was so important for them to come back to show the coaches, Coach, this is what I'm doing. This is what you showed me. And they're still a very tight bunch. They still hang out. We learned that they have their own group chats. So they're talking
Yes.
to each other on a weekly basis, even though they're spread out all over the country. And now they've included these young men in high school into that group chat. That's building community to me. And then just the valuable life lessons. When you have young men who are gone off to college and they're kind of doing their thing, but they make it a point to get in touch with you on a regular basis and say, hey, Coach, remember we talked about this, and remember you said this, and all of these different life lessons, they're coming to life for these young men, and you can see it. And then it's important for our alumni to come back and to talk to the young men who are in high school, because they're just 2, 3, 4 years removed from that experience themselves. And so, and it's not, we're not asking our alumni to come back and do it. They're saying, Coach, we need to do this. This is information that these young men need that nobody told us at our age when we were there. The coaches told us, but it's like, we couldn't listen to y'all, old man. You got gray hair, Coach. I can't hear that. But I can hear it from somebody who is 2 or 3 years removed from that. And so they're coming back and they're saying, we want to show these young men these same valuable life lessons. So, Doc, the book has been a mentor for me. It's almost like a study guide that it's not a read through, it's a work through. So you work through it, you go back and you reference it. And then it's good for application. I just like how you wrote it. You make it very practical, but it's good for application. So you can go and apply the principles, the theories that you're setting out in the book. see how they work, go back, tweak it, and remodify it. I sound like a coach now because that's what we do.
Yes, indeed. And I hope you guys see your influence on me through the Finding the Balance book project, because to have an opportunity to spend 3 or 4 days with you guys, really intense with training on how to coach, how to lead, how to know your personnel, how to invest in people. One of the things I was so proud of working with your organization is the investment you gave me off of a simple drive-by, simple stop-by that became this decade-long relationship, and I'm very grateful for that, and everybody involved.
Doc,
And
has it been a decade?
man, it has been since, shoot, I think it was the Indy Final Four, if I'm not mistaken. But
Oh
we can
man,
we can go
time
back.
goes quick, huh?
Yes. And speaking of that, we're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, in our final segment, man, I'm going to pick Garnett's eyes, ears, and thoughts on all of these changes in college sports. And we got breaking news to talk about too on this Find the Balance Friday. And we'll be right back after a brief break.
There is an old business adage that says, what gets measured and monitored gets done. It is also fact that deadlines spur action. That is what the CKA Save Project's academic monitoring service can do for student athletes. Measure and monitor their academic progress to improve their grades. Our academic monitoring services provide ongoing academic support for student athletes for a designated period of time. Our academic success coaches work with student athletes on time management and organizational skills, along with improving their ability to self-advocate. Every few weeks, our academic success coaches meet with student athletes to assess their academic progress, as well as provide ongoing academic advising. If needed, student athletes have access to CKA Learning Specialists who provide virtual core subject academic support for student athletes. For more information, visit us on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org or schedule a free virtual consultation with Dr. Keith Adams by email at cka@ckasaveproject.org.
Welcome back to our Find the Balance Friday edition of the Odd Coaches Podcast with Garnett Overby. And then segment 3, Garnett, there's a lot going on in college athletics. And every year annually, the Institute provides commentary, critiques, articles. The Good Doctor can be read on ESPN.com. But man, what are your current thoughts? Go on NIL, go on transfer portal, go on conference realignment, whatever direction you want to go in. Let us know what your thoughts are.
First of all, I want to give a big shout out for Title IX. 50th anniversary. That is phenomenal. When you bring people into the fold and bring them into the huddle, bring them into the team just gets better. It gets stronger. So, a big shout out to Title IX for all of the trailblazers, especially. There's been a lot, especially this past week, since it was the actual anniversary of it this past week, about the trailblazers and what some of these women had to go through and endure. And so just a big shout out to them. It's many numbers of them. But one that really stands out to me is a lady that I got a chance to know, Tina Sloane Green. And, she was one of our Invisible Women in Sport guests. She was actually on 2 times, and her daughter, Tracy Green, as well. Tracy Green is the head tennis coach at Harvard. And she's just a trailblazer. Tina Sloane Green is a trailblazer. Everybody knows her, in college athletics, from lacrosse and field hockey. And just she went through pre-Title IX and she came through it. And a good person to look up in terms of wanting to understand some of the history of how women, and especially women of color, have had to endure through sports, pre-Title IX, through the early years of it, and then out and beyond it. Phenomenal. The only Black female to ever coach a team to a national championship in collegiate lacrosse. So phenomenal lady to look up and to know. So that's the first thing, Doc, is just we have to recognize Title IX because it's provided opportunities for so many people to do some phenomenal things. Just imagine if we didn't have Title IX. Just think of today's women, just the phenomenal female student athletes that are going on in today's world. Would we know them? Would we know them for who they are? Would they have the opportunity to give their contribution back to the community if they didn't have the opportunities to display their talents and their skills? So just a big shout out to Title IX. I love that. You mentioned NIL. I'm a former student athlete, Division I college football. Listen, folks out there, I used to hear it all the time. Athletes, you guys shouldn't be complaining about this and that. You get everything. We got a lot of privileges. That is true. As a revenue generating student athlete, there's two different types of student athletes. And so, audience, you guys have to know that out there. You have your revenue generating student athletes and your non-revenue generating student athletes. Your revenue generating sports are primarily your football, your basketball. Depending on what institution you're at, it could be softball, baseball, it could be soccer, but for the most part, that's your revenue generating sports. Those student athletes are responsible to help to generate the revenue, the operating revenue for the entire athletic department. So for all of the sports, they're the ones that's generating that money. And it comes primarily through TV revenue is the big one. And then your ticket sales, and then all of your concessions and apparel, and that's where it comes through. So there's a lot of pressure on revenue generating student athletes to perform, to keep the revenues up, to keep the TV ratings up. So much so that when I was a Division I college football player, Doc, I am not kidding you, my 11 months of my life was dedicated to the sport. 11 months. And that 1 month that I had off, don't get it twisted, people. It wasn't one full month off. It was a week here, maybe a few days here. Like, it is a full-time commitment for these student athletes to perform. And we weren't getting paid for that. So let me give you guys an example of what I mean by that. Cam Newton's senior year at Auburn. Auburn was coming into that season. Coach Malzahn, it was talk out there that he might be heading out because Auburn wasn't performing quite at the level that they wanted them to perform. And so it was just kind of like a cloud over Auburn. Everybody was looking at Auburn. And Cam Newton shows up and he has this phenomenal season, Heisman season, takes them to a national championship. They win the national championship. Coach Malzahn's coaching career continues now at Auburn. Cam Newton goes off to the NFL and everything is good. I read a report somewhere, Doc. I can't remember the where I saw the report, but I read the report that year alone, Cam Newton alone, with his image and his likeness and his jersey sales and his TV ratings, it earned that institution over $40 million in revenues just on him.
And
but
that
what
doesn't surprise me. That does not surprise me.
But what did Cam get out of that? Well, I can tell you what he got out of it. He got a lot of heartache and pain for that 11 plus months that he had to spend. Nobody really knows and understands the injuries that he had to endure and go through. Nobody understands that he is probably putting in maybe 6 hours a day in being an athlete. And now he has to go be a student. He has to stay eligible to be a student. So he's in class, he's studying, and then he has to try to be a person. Like, he's still a young man. He is a young man. And so he has to try to be a person. That's what he got out of the deal. The institution, they got rich, and they're still making money off of Cam Newton jerseys. So,
and to piggyback on that, the person who wrote the foreword to my book was Fowler and Campbell, who played at George Mason University. George Mason goes on that incredible Final Four run in 2006. Heck, I think that's probably when I met you. And they're still Now George Mason's in the Atlantic 10 and blah, blah, blah. Now, Fowler's fortunate enough, he played 12 years in Europe, came back, and now he works for the Patriot Club at George Mason. So it's a full circle kind of thing. But
Absolutely.
don't think that he and his teammates didn't really enhance all of that to put George Mason in that position. And I know that there's been books written about, that type of effect. I know the good doctor, Lapchick, has talked about the impact of sports and what it does academically, because sports, as we say, is the front porch of an institution. So, I'm in full agreement with that.
Absolutely. So I'm all for NIL. But I think that there needs to be some type of federal regulation so that it's kind of even across the board. Right now, it's just a state thing. And so you even saw, what was it, a couple months ago, the soccer players in California in high school. They're the first high school kids that got an NIL deal. But what people don't know is that that's only good for California.
Yes.
So if they go to college outside of California, that deal may not work for that particular state. So it's a state by state thing. And that's one of the things people have to learn and get educated about. It's not a federal, it's individualized by state. Yes. So I say to all of the student athletes out there, get it, because they're going to get it out of you when you're in college. So get it. You mentioned the transfer portal, Doc. I am not a fan of the transfer portal the way it is currently structured.
Okay.
I'm a fan of the transfer portal, but just the way that it's currently structured is that there's no consequence for a student athlete to transfer. They can just go into the portal and, they could be playing for this university today, going to the portal tomorrow, and on this third day, they're playing for another team. And the reason why I'm not a fan of that, there needs to be some type of delay. There used to be, when I was playing ball, you could transfer, but you're going to lose the year of eligibility to do that. So there was a risk factor in transferring. They've taken away the risk factor. And who does that hurt? It hurts the high school student athlete. That's who's being affected. And I'm seeing that we're having a hard time placing really, really good student athletes into these institutions because they can go and get a player in the transfer portal. So I give you a perfect example. Let's say we have a high school senior that plays quarterback on our team, and really good quarterback. He may be a 3 or 4 star student athlete, can play at just about any Division I institution in the country, but the institution that's looking at needing a quarterback, they have to decide, do I go and get this high school senior, or do I go and get this kid who redshirted last year at a college institution and now he's in the transfer portal? So I can get this kid that has some college experience for 4 years, or I can take a chance on this high school kid and see how that pans out. Well, who can you get a better evaluation of? You can get a better evaluation of the kid that already has some college experience. I have a much better evaluation over him with no risk. So who am I going to take? And it could even be a kid that has played 1 year and only has 3 years of eligibility left, and it's going to be the same evaluation. I can get this kid for 3 years with a more guaranteed evaluation versus this high school kid that is really good, has great potential, but I don't know exactly how that's going to translate to college.
Yeah.
I know how this kid over here translates to college. And so it's really, really hurting high school student athletes. There needs to be some type of measure of accountability on that transfer portal. And right now it's not there. What's the risk factor in going into the transfer portal? The other thing that I think the transfer portal, the current structure, the way it's teaching these student athletes is you don't have to be loyal. Remember the days of loyalty, Doc? I remember the days of when the NBA was franchise teams back in the 80s. When you played the Lakers, you knew you was going to play Magic and Kareem and Worthy and Byron Scott and Michael Cooper and Kurt Rambis. Like, you just knew that. You knew when you played the Boston Celtics, you was playing against Bird and McHale and Dennis Johnson and Danny Ainge and Robert Parrish. You knew it, right? Because those guys, they were loyal to their teams. They were loyal to their franchises. You go back and look at their college careers, they were loyal to their team. Now you have guys that are coming out, going into the NFL, NBA, to these professional teams. You look at their resume, they've played for 2-3 different colleges. Yeah. So what happened to the principle of loyalty? And you're also seeing that trickle down into high school. Yeah. There's a lot of high school student athletes that are transferring because well, I don't think the coach likes me. Oh, well, I'm not playing. Well, son, you're a freshman. You are a freshman. Like, it's a process. You're not going to come. Yeah, you might have been good in Pop Warner. You was a superstar in Pop Warner, but now you're coming into a different pond. You're the little fish now. You're not the big fish. And so you have to build yourself back up. And so, the transfer portal I see is creating some false realities for some of these student athletes, and it's trickling down even into the youth level. That I think if you change the structure, you put a risk value in there, I think the transfer portal becomes a little bit more valuable for both sides. Because even for the institutions, what's the real risk that you're taking? I need a quarterback. Let me take this guy for a year. If it doesn't work out, get him out of there, get somebody else out the transfer portal, and I can keep my program like that. So there just needs to be some accountability, a risk factor that's added to the transfer portal. And then the other thing that's really concerning me right now, Doc, when it comes to sports, student athlete, youth sports, I'm having a real hard time with youth sports, and I'm close to it being a high school coach. Youth sports now is teaching kids how to specialize. Man, when I was in high school, Doc, and I know you were this way, I lettered in football, basketball, baseball, track. I lettered in all of those 4 sports. You have kids now that at 10 years old, son, what sports you play? Basketball. You playing the other sports? No. How many years you been playing basketball? 4 or 8 years. Like, son, you're 10. How have you been playing basketball for 8 years? And they're specializing. And I think that there's value in diversity. There's value even in diversity of sports and using your talents. And there's a lot of young men that are just missing out on opportunities because they're specializing. We have a young man that just finished. He graduated from the University of Tennessee. He played for us in our high school program. We got him as a 9th grader. He came and he started playing football in the 9th grade. Well, before that, he was a basketball player. So if you asked him, well, what's your sport? Basketball. Well, how many years you been playing basketball? He was 14 at that time. I think the kid had like 9 years of experience of playing basketball. But Doc, here's the thing. He was a big 6'5" kid, 250 pounds. Just the look of him is like, I'm going to give that kid a football scholarship, not basketball. He came out, he played football for us. He was okay his freshman year. Size was his advantage, and he was able to use that. But he started to develop, and that turned into a scholarship to the University of Tennessee in football. If he had stayed in basketball, I mean, who knows? He was a good basketball player, but he was a better football player. And he learned that. But he would have never gotten there if he had just stayed and playing in his specialized sport. The other thing that's an issue for me with youth sports is how they're monetizing youth sports now. It's hugely monetized. And so are these young kids, are they really amateur student athletes, or are they like almost like semi-pros? I have a good friend of mine, my mentor, actually, he coached youth softball. And he used to tell me about these experiences, especially in the summer when you have your club teams and they're competing for nationals and everything. You have these certain young ladies, especially pitchers, were being sponsored, by, certain organizations. I won't say any organizations' names, but they're being sponsored. And so basically you have a player on your team, They get all of their equipment, they get their travel fees paid for, they get their room and board paid for, and they get all of their tournament fees paid for. They can't receive a check in return, but in essence, minus the check, you have a semi-pro athlete at 12 years old. That's a problem. That's problematic. And there's just so much that comes along with that. Let these kids be kids. Kids need an opportunity to just be kids and just play. Whatever happened to the days where you just take a ball and roll it out on the court and see what happens? And really what happens from that, kids, they build relationships, they learn how to deal with conflict, they improve their communication skills. Like the list just goes on and on and on. Just let kids be kids. Take the money out of it and let the kids be kids. And then the other thing that I have with youth sports nowadays is around the parents. The parents are so caught up in the social media hype. Parents, let me tell you something. As a high school football coach who has had the opportunity to put 25 kids out in college, we do not care about your kids' Pop Warner or youth ranking. It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. So stop getting caught up in all of the hype of, oh, well, my kid is ranked this and that. He's 12. It doesn't mean anything yet. It has no relevance to anything when you get to the high school level, because the game changes. You know, every time you go to the next level, the game changes. It gets bigger, it gets faster, it gets stronger, it's more intelligent. So parents, stop doing that. Stop getting caught up in the social media hype. And then, Doc, the other thing that causes for student athletes is more of a me community now, a me society, instead of a we. They've lost the real concept of team, because I got to get my hype up on social media so everybody look at me, and it's creating false expectations for parents as well. That is my biggest issue with being a high school coach. It's not the parents that's over exuberant and cheering for their kid. It's the parents that's telling the coaches that their kids should be getting this offer and you're not doing this for my kid because so-and-so got an offer. Well, when they were in youth ball, my kid was better than so-and-so. It's called development. It's called development. I remember I grew up with a kid playing Pop Warner football. I grew up with a kid. He was the center on our team. And we had, during that time, the best nose guard in the league. And this center got destroyed every day in practice, Doc. I mean, to the point he was crying. He wanted to quit. He just didn't want to do it. Let's fast forward now, 4 years, senior year in high school. That kid that played center that was getting destroyed was one of the area top quarterbacks and got a scholarship to go to college to play quarterback. But if you had ranked him when he came out of Pop Warner, you would have said that kid will never play football for me because he's a crybaby, he's weak, he's all of these different things. He doesn't have no heart. But development happened. The kid that played nose guard that destroyed him every day, nothing, no offers, didn't play past high school.
Man, you have given a lot to digest, some quick hitters for fans new to our show. Every Thursday, we do a college episode that talks about issues in college. And just as Garnett said, we just recently did a breakdown of the newcomers coming into all of the major college basketball conferences. Number one, transfers. Number two, top 100 players who end up becoming transfers due to TNT, time and touches often. So what he's saying is true in terms of if you've got 2 years left on your contract, yeah, you're going to go get. College coaches have told us point blank, we're going to get a kid out of the portal. And we've already seen 30 games of him in basketball or 10 games of him in football instead of developing the high school kid, because, man, I got to feed my family. I've got to convince this high school kid to work, where the transfer kid, man, he already knows, or she already knows, it's in women's athletics too, hey, this might be my last chance. in terms of what you said about high school, kids transferring from youth program to youth program, from high school to high school. Yeah, that comes up as well. I will pause on the loyalty piece because we're taping this fans on July 1st, and on June 30th, UCLA and USC, who have over 100 years of relationships, said, I'm out of the Pac 12 and I'm going to the Big Ten, in part because it is reported that the Big Ten will negotiate a $1 billion TV contract, which means it is estimated that each individual institution every year will get $80 to $100 million a year. Mm-hmm. So we and my partner and I always pause on the loyalty conversation because the schools have not shown any loyalty. So as Jay Billis would say, free market. And the market has a way, I think you were an economic person, of taking care of itself. Yep. But Garnett, can you tell our fans and my super producer, Kelly, how can we follow the Institute of Sport and Social Justice on Twitter, Instagram? Please provide our audience your social media handles and where we can follow you guys.
You can get us. Our website is sportandsocialjustice.org. And it's just like that. And you can go there and you can see all of our programs, our services that we provide as well. Our board of directors, you can see them on there as well as the rest of the team that I have an opportunity and a privilege to work with. Also, all of our social media handles. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, the LinkedIn is at Institute SSJ. So that's Institute.
We'll put it on the screen.
Yeah. So at Institute SSJ. So that's our handle for all our social media.
Oh, yes. And Kelly will definitely take care of that. I can't thank you enough for giving us this power hour, is what I like to call it, where we just dove into a lot. I hope high school, college athletes, parents, coaches, and stakeholders, clip these segments, and I hope it sparks great conversation, because my partner's fond of saying knowledge should be shared. So, hey, man, it is great catching up, and thank you so much for being with us. So on behalf of my tag team partner, who is on assignment, literally on assignment, I am Dr. Keith Adams, saying thank you for listening and or watching the iCoaches podcast, and we will see you on the sidelines. Till next time, take care.
We hope you enjoyed today's show. The iCoaches podcast drops new episodes every Tuesday through Friday on most weeks. Make sure you subscribe to the iCoaches podcast on Apple Music, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. Follow the iCoaches podcast on Twitter and Instagram at iCoaches. Follow Dr. Adams on Twitter and Instagram at CKA Save Project. In addition, follow Coach Mike Francis on Twitter and Instagram at Coach Franchise, spelled Coach FRANCHIZE. For more information about the CKA Save Project, please visit them on the web at www.ckasaveproject.org. See you next time on the iCoaches podcast.